The Hartley Vineyard gathering was already alive with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses when I rolled into the gravel driveway exactly 30 minutes late. It wasn't by accident. At 33, I'd learned that punctuality only earned me a seat in the corner, ignored while everyone else basked in parental praise. These annual reunions were less about reconnecting and more about applauding the family's shining stars, my older siblings and cousins, each one Ivy League minted, tailored to perfection, and deeply cherished by our parents. I slid out of my rented black Tesla in a tailored navy jumpsuit, modern clean lines, deliberately subtle but unmistakably stylish, and made my way past rows of glossy Bentleys, Teslas, and BMWs parked with precision. As I approached the broad white veranda of the estate, my father's voice cut through the air from the balcony above. Lena finally, Franklin Hartley called, clipped and impassive. Everyone's inside already. I gave a small, tight-lipped smile and raised a hand in a casual wave. Got caught wrapping up a call, I said lightly. It was technically true. I'd just left a high-level strategy meeting with my acquisition team ironing out the final details on something massive. Franklin barely nodded already halfway back inside. Still doing that remote work, he tossed over his shoulder, uninterested in an answer. Before I could respond, a familiar voice as smooth as polished steel chimed in beside me. Lena, Camille Hartley Reed, 36, and the family's favorite appeared with a practiced grin and a flute of champagne. We were just toasting our latest merger, 40 million post-tax profit this quarter. She scanned me from head to toe, her eyes pausing briefly at my shoes, which she clearly deemed underwhelming. Still running that little freelance gig, she added, too casual to be kind. Still managing boutique portfolios, I replied with a pleasant tone and a knowing smile, fully aware she'd scoff. From behind her, Bennett Cole chuckled, smug, effortless. Well, you know, Camille said we're always hiring. Analyst roles open every year. It's good foundational experience, even if it's not glamorous. I nodded politely, hiding the grin threatening to rise. They had no idea. Over the past 5 years, I had methodically constructed Iron Veil Strategies, my own private investment firm, operating discreetly behind a series of shell entities and strategic fronts. We specialized in distressed assets, businesses on the brink, reviving them, flipping them, and walking away with returns most firms couldn't touch. And the real twist, just last quarter, Iron Veil quietly acquired a controlling interest in Hartley Reed Capital, the very family firm they all worshipped. I'm good where I am, I said, simply locking eyes with Camille. She exchanged a glance with my father, smug, amused, patronizing. Well, if you ever want to work on something real, she offered, you know where to find us. I followed them into the glass-walled tasting room, the clatter of crystal and bursts of laughter spilling out around us. My phone vibrated in my hand. A message from Marie, my executive assistant, lit up the screen, final signatures in. Full control confirmed. Congratulations, Ms. Hartley. I slipped the phone back into my clutch, a small smile curling at the edge of my lips. Let the reunion begin. From the sun-drenched patio, Uncle Grant Whitaker's voice bellowed across the yard. Lena, come over here, let me see you. I made my way to his table, champagne glass in hand, bracing for the inevitable commentary. Still figuring things out, huh? He teased, giving my arm a paternal pat. I'm doing just fine, Uncle Grant, I replied smoothly. Fine, he scoffed. Fine doesn't cut it in this family. Look at Camille, youngest COO in California's finance sector, and Bennett, already partner at Cole & Mason. He beamed proudly. Now that's what thriving looks like. I smiled with restrained grace, thinking of the acquisition documents sealed and secure in my briefcase, the ink barely dry. Iron Veil's latest triumph had been signed that very morning. Speaking of wins, Camille had reappeared, her eyes sparkling with barely concealed pride. Did you hear about our upcoming expansion? We're buying out 3 boutique firms next quarter, all tech-adjacent, super scalable. Analysts are saying we're about to become the next major force in finance. I sipped my champagne slowly. What she didn't know was that 2 of those acquisitions had already been subtly intercepted and blocked by Iron Veil subsidiaries, while the third was on the cusp of announcing a merger with one of my other holdings. How exciting, I murmured. Oh, it's huge, Camille said. Daddy thinks we'll hit $1 billion in revenue by next year. Hartley Reed is going global. I nodded, remembering the financial analysis report waiting on my desk. Their projections were over-leveraged nonsense, a soap bubble inflated with debt and PR. It would burst within 24 hours. My mother Elaine appeared beside me with a wistful smile. Your cousin Reagan just made Forbes 30 under 30, isn't that something? Very impressive, I said, politely biting back the urge to mention that Aunt Darlene's PR agency had ghostwritten every line of the profile. You had so much promise at Black River, she sighed. We all thought you'd be the next star on Wall Street. I saw through that world 5 years ago, I replied. While you all posed for glossy features, I built Ironvale Strategies. We manage 50 billion in global assets now. Things change, Mom. Before she could respond, Camille tapped her glass for attention. I have some exciting news, she beamed. Hartley Reed is going public next month. Initial valuation $4 billion. Cheers erupted. Uncle Grant whooped. Bennett began detailing yacht upgrades. Camille turned to me, faux sincere. You should invest, Lena. Might help you finally build something of your own. I thought of my San Francisco team still working into the night, triple-checking every number ahead of tomorrow's market shakeup. I'll keep that in mind, I said coolly. Behind me, I heard Aunt Darlene whisper to my mother. She just never found her footing, did she? All those degrees, my mother sighed, and for what? No husband, no home, no title. I glanced at my phone. Another message from Marie, press release queued for 9:00 a.m. All systems green. Perfect. Camille caught the movement. Work emergency, she asked, smirking. One of your side gigs crashing? Something like that, I smiled. Actually, Camille, I said, cocking my head, what's Hartley Reed's plan for the Southeast Asia portfolio? Heard there were some hiccups in the semiconductor pipeline. Her smile twitched. That's not public information, she said flatly. Where'd you hear that? Oh, I said, letting the silence stretch. In our world, news travels. As the stars began to puncture the deepening twilight, Camille stiffened at my insinuation, her smile cracking like porcelain under pressure. Especially with companies headed for an IPO, I said softly, letting the implication linger in the clinking air around us. She straightened her posture, a practiced sculpture of composure. Everything is fine, she replied, clipped and defiant. What she didn't know, what none of them could possibly suspect, was that for the past 12 months, Ironvale Strategies had been orchestrating a silent symphony of acquisition. My firm had methodically secured controlling interests in 3 of Hartley Reed Capital's primary suppliers and 2 of their most significant debt holders. We weren't just spectating their IPO journey from the sidelines, we were scripting its final act. Of course, I murmured, my voice smooth as velvet and twice as dangerous. I'm sure everything will unfold just as it's meant to. The night wore on, slipping into that strange space between the formal and the forgotten. Toasts rose and fell like the tides, each one brimming with hollow accolades and thinly veiled barbs directed at me. I let them wash over me, my face a mask of impassive civility, a champagne glass, my sole shield. As the gathering dwindled, Camille leaned in the glint in her eye, part challenge, part pity. You know, Lena, she began, her tone feather light. You could still come work for us. Entry level, of course. But you know how it is. Family looks out for family. I turned to her, letting my gaze linger. You're right, Camille. Family should help family. She laughed, a brittle little trill that didn't quite reach her eyes. What could you possibly teach me about business? You'd be surprised, I said, checking my phone with a finality that crackled in the air between us. The green light was on. Every line of defense, every board vote, every signature was in. The following morning dawned golden and indifferent, its sunlight slanting across my penthouse windows, illuminating the steel and glass sprawl of downtown San Francisco. I sipped my coffee in silence, the warmth of the porcelain mug grounding me. Then the alerts began. Market Pulse, Reuters, Industry Wire. One by one, the headlines bled across my screen. Ironvale Strategies acquires controlling interest in Hartley Reed Capital. IPO dismantled in surprise power play. Mystery CEO revealed. Marie stepped in, unshaken and efficient. Press releases are locked and live. All board votes confirmed. You're officially in. I adjusted the lapels of my Navy Chanel suit, an indulgence I rarely afforded myself, saved for moments that required not just power, but precision. Camille and the team are prepping for the IPO press conference. 9:30 sharp, Marie added. A smile tugged at my lips. That press conference won't be happening. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Camille. A final desperate olive branch. Still time to buy in before we go public. Family perks included. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop. With a few swift keystrokes, the truth spilled into the digital bloodstream of the financial world. At precisely 9:00 a.m., the market exploded. Phones in my office erupted like a hive stirred to fury. Camille, Grant, Bennett, all calling, all scrambling, too late. By 9:15, Marie returned. They're here, she said, all of them, downstairs. I didn't need names. Send them up. Camille stormed in first, her blazer askew, mascara running like ink down a cracked page. "What the hell did you do?" she hissed. "This is illegal. You can't do this. Our IPO is today." Grant barreled in after her, his face blotched with rage. "Where's the CEO of Iron Vale?" I stepped forward. "Mom, Dad." They stopped. "You're speaking to her." The silence shattered what little pride remained in the room. Camille gaped soundless. Grant sank into a chair, his bravado leaking out of him like air from a balloon. My mother clutched her pearls, stunned into stillness. "Impossible," Camille whispered. I stood, letting the moment crystallize around us. "Is it Iron Vale Strategies?" I began, my voice a clear cut through the tension. Founded 5 years ago, now manages over 50 billion in global assets. And as of this morning, it manages your legacy too. Bennett's eyes widened. "You're her, the phantom CEO, the ghost." I nodded. "The very one." I slid a leather folder across the desk. "Care to see the real numbers?" Camille opened it with trembling fingers. Her color drained as she read confidential memos, audit reports, market data. These are internal," she stammered. "Your semiconductor play in Vietnam is a bust," I said calmly. "Your Asia forecasts were inflated by a contractor you failed to vet. 3 of your VPs are dumping stock." Grant raised a hand. "Now just a minute." "No," I said. "You listen. You built a legacy on illusion, and I dismantled it with facts." Behind me, the wall of monitors came alive, charting the collapse in real time. "Your IPO valuation, a fantasy. The real number, 800 million on a good day." Camille crumpled into a chair. "Why would you do this to us?" "To us," I laughed softly. "You laughed when I left Black River, offered me internships while I built an empire. You didn't help. You boxed me in." My mother murmured. "We thought we were helping." "No," I said. "You were molding me into something safe, something small. But success isn't safety, it's ownership." Grant leaned in, eyes narrowed. "So this is revenge." "No," I said, "this is business. Iron Vale turns over-leveraged firms into real value. That your company shares my name? That's just irony." Bennett swallowed. "The board will block it. They already approved it." I gestured to their phones. As if on command, a chorus of buzzes erupted. Camille stared down at the breaking news flashing on her screen. Her mascara streaked as her world unraveled. "You destroyed everything." "No," I replied, steady as stone. "I saved it. Iron Vale Strategies," I explained with quiet resolve, "specializes in breathing life back into legacy firms like yours, bloated with nostalgia, yet hollowed by complacency." In 6 months, I continued pressing another button on my desk. Hartley Reed Capital will be more stable, more transparent, and stronger than it has been in over a decade. But it will thrive under new leadership, not under the Hartley name. A pregnant silence filled the room before my mother's voice, hushed and laced with decades of conflicted pride and fear, asked, "And what happens to us?" The screens behind me flickered and changed, unveiling a series of contracts, transition plans, severance structures, and valuation reports. "Each of you will receive full market compensation for your shares," I said evenly. "Current executives will be offered generous severance packages." Then I paused, letting a small, almost imperceptible smile tug at the corner of my lips. And should anyone feel inclined to begin again from the ground up, I might have a few entry-level roles. Just a foot in the door, as they say. The air grew heavy. A thick, suffocating stillness clung to the corners of the office like smoke. Camille rose abruptly, her blouse wrinkled from the storm she'd walked through, her pride more disheveled still. Without a word, she shoved past Bennett, who was already dialing his law firm, desperation etched into every motion. Uncle Grant followed, one arm guiding a hollow-eyed Camille toward the elevator, like a father leading a child from a battlefield. Only my mother lingered. She stood at the threshold, backlit by the city's platinum glow, her voice a whisper. "All this time, you were building an empire?" I nodded slowly. "While you were ashamed of my so-called consulting work, while you measured my worth by job titles and wedding invitations, I was out there creating something real." She looked down at her hands, as if trying to reconcile the daughter she'd known with the woman standing before her. "I don't even know who you are anymore." "No," I said gently. "You never did." When the last echo of footsteps faded, I approached the floor-to-ceiling windows. San Francisco shimmered below, alive with motion and momentum, reflecting the pulse of my company, now free to rise unshackled. Marie entered quietly with fresh coffee. "Security badges have been deactivated. Transition teams are moving into Hartley Reed headquarters as we speak." "And the press?" I asked. "Half of Wall Street is trying to unmask the phantom CEO. Some already suspect the family connection." I smiled faintly. Let them wonder. My work speaks louder than their headlines. Another message pinged. Camille again. Her last word of the day. I hope you're happy. You've torn this family apart. My reply was immediate measured. No, Camille. I just showed you what real success looks like. The months that followed were nothing short of transformative. Iron Vale didn't just inherit a crumbling empire. We rebuilt it brick by strategic brick. The stock, after its dramatic fall stabilized, then surged, fueled not by press or pedigree, but by results clarity and the kind of transparency Hartley Reid had long abandoned. True to my word, I extended opportunities. Bennett surprisingly accepted an entry-level position in our legal department. To his credit, he worked harder than most. Camille declined, ego it seemed, was the last thing she could shed. But Uncle Grant surprised even me. He returned as a senior advisor, and once divorced from the podium, stripped of his need to dominate every conversation, he proved an asset. His deep knowledge of infrastructure and legacy systems became vital. The next family reunion was predictably smaller, still held at Aunt Darlene's estate in Napa, but the tone had shifted. The champagne still sparkled in glasses, but the talk was gentler, the competition dulled. Bravado had thinned, replaced by an air of humility. I watched it all from my usual perch, quiet, detached, observant. Near the end of the night, Camille approached. Her heels were shorter this time, her voice less rehearsed. I've been thinking about what you said about real success. She hesitated. That position you mentioned, is it still open? I studied her, trying to read what lingered behind her eyes. Then I nodded. Come by the office Monday, we'll talk. That night, as I drove home through the wine-soaked hills, I reflected on the family's old definition of success. Press mentions, tailored suits, inflated IPOs. But I had discovered another kind. One born of quiet impact, of building with integrity, of leading without fanfare. A kind that required no applause, only results. The next morning I arrived early at Iron Vale. The dawn bathed our headquarters in gold. The old Hartley Reid logo was being removed from the building, a symbol of finality and rebirth. Marie greeted me with coffee and a list. Board meeting at 10, next acquisition on the agenda. I smiled. Perfect timing, let's redefine success again. And if you've ever been that person, the quiet one, the dismissed one, the one always underestimated, then you know how this story feels. I never needed to shout. I let the work speak. So if you've built in silence, if you've risen while they weren't watching, I want to hear from you. Tell me when you stopped explaining and started executing. Tell me what your success looks like. And remember, this don't wait for the world to see you. Define yourself first. Build so strong that the noise comes after the result. If this journey stirred something in you, a flicker of recognition, then consider it a shared moment between builders. So like this video, share it with someone building in the shadows, and subscribe if you're ready to win smart, silent, and unforgettable.